poacher turned gamekeeper turned poacher is simply not on.
Behind the public face of politics is a network of unelected and unaccountable bodies, each strand exerting their influence on policy decisions behind closed doors. This is going to be a series on how private interests influence or even create government policies. So one of the things you might have noticed in the news a lot in the last couple of years is tax avoidance. Massive corporations like Vodafone, Starbucks, Google and Amazon paying little or no tax because they found perfectly legal ways around it. At the time, loads of people said that what the businesses were doing was immoral, but others said that it's just what businesses do, maximise profits. We had politicians claiming they were going to stamp it out, expose tax avoiders and get a fair deal for taxpayers. But there are lots of reasons why people think that's not actually going to happen, and one of those is the Big Four. PricewaterhouseCoopers, KPMG, Deloitte and Ernst & Young are all accountancy firms. Together they're known as the Big Four, and they're vital for the world's largest corporations to pay as small a sum of money in tax as they possibly can. What we call tax avoidance, they call tax planning. It's estimated that the four companies earn around £2 billion a year in the UK alone and $25 billion globally for their work on tax. But they also work for the government. They're employed to give advice on the writing of the UK's tax laws, or as they call it, providing technical insight. In fact, last year they earned an estimated £500 million from government business. PwC alone has contracts with the Ministries of Defence, Justice, Work and Pensions, International Development, Environment, Transport, Communities and Local Government, Health, Education, the Cabinet Office, the Department of Business, HMRC and the Treasury. Then there's the campaigning that they do on behalf of companies. Ernst & Young, for example, has a policy developing service, or in plain English, a lobbying service. They campaign to try and get beneficial changes to tax laws for the companies they're working for. The guy who runs that team at Ernst & Young is the global head of tax policy, Chris Sanger. He also happens to be an advisor to the government on tax policy. And then to round off the circle, EY are tax advisors for Google and Amazon. So while they're working to reduce tax bills for companies, they're also helping to form the UK's tax laws. But there's more. If you want some examples of just how interlinked the taxman is to the Big Four accountancy firms, you've just got to look at the number of people who switch between the two. In recent years, there have been 6 government ministers moving to the Big Four, including Alan Milburn, a former Labour health minister who went to PwC to advise on changes to the NHS. Then there were Charles Clarke and Jackie Smith, who both used to be Home Secretaries, who went to KPMG. There's a long list of advisors and officials, but the biggest might be this guy, Dave Hartnett. He's the man who wrote off a £10 million interest bill for Goldman Sachs and let Vodafone off £6 billion in tax. He was also taken out 27 times by the Big Four in just a couple of years to be wined and dined. And he's just moved to Deloitte. And it goes the other way too. Spinwatch's Freedom of Information requests found that there have been at least 50 Big Four employees seconded to the government in the last 3 years. So is there really any chance that tax avoidance will be stopped if there are companies who are advising the government but also minimising the amount that companies have to pay in tax? Let us know what you think in a comment. We'll bring you part 2 in this series soon, but in the meantime, check out Phil's video on the Bilderberg group explaining who they are, because there's probably going to be a lot of names that crop up in that also crop up in this series, and we'll see you soon.